While the cleaners travel through rough terrain, Engine grumbles about always being the one to drive. The others ask why he insists on it, and he replies that if anyone else took the wheel, they'd fall asleep mid-route. He especially calls out Gree, claiming his driving's so bad that even if they plummeted off a cliff, no one would care. Just then, Engine hits a massive rock in the road, launching the vehicle into the air. The sudden jolt wakes everyone, and someone complains about his reckless driving. Engine snaps back, blaming the terrain, not his skills. Meanwhile, Rio groans in pain, prompting Ruto to realize Remlin's charm doesn't heal minor wounds. Rio confirms, saying she thought it only worked on life-threatening injuries, just as Remlin had said. Zanuck explains that Tamsi caused the injury, but it had been necessary. Tamsi quietly admits he feels bad about it. As the conversation drifts, Engine notes that since they've stepped into a forbidden zone, they should get a proper checkup. He reassures them that they're almost there and brings them to the same place he once took Ruto for treatment. Ruto recognizes the alley immediately, surprised. It's familiar. They walk deeper into the narrow space, and Ruto curiously asks what Engine means by doctor, though from his tone, it's clear he already knows. In the hallway, graffiti scrawled on the wall reads, "I won't come here again." Finally, they're met by an elderly female doctor, busy with her tools, who bluntly asks what they want. She's clearly not in the mood for visitors. Ruto is about to call her old man, catching himself just in time. Ruto quickly corrects himself, addressing the old doctor as lady instead of old man, and she affirms the correction. Nearby, a patient grumbles, calling her a noisy old woman, complaining that her voice echoes in his head. He tells her to shut up and just get on with treating him. Unbothered, she shoots back that he's the one being noisy, and if he's going to enter her place, he should shut up and get treated properly. With a huff, she adds that her grandchildren are also visiting today, so the place is already loud enough. She finishes treating him and tells him to pay up and leave. The patient grunts that he won't be coming back. As he exits, Engine casually comments that maybe her attitude is the reason she isn't attracting new patients. But the doctor shrugs it off, saying she doesn't need to change herself just to please complainers. Ruto quietly mutters that he actually thinks that's kind of cool. Rio notes that Engine always brings them here when they're nearby, and Zanuck smirks, suggesting Engine's got a soft spot for tough women. Engine laughs, admitting it's true, especially with this grandma. He respects her. She's not just some old woman, she's a legendary doctor who's been treating body contamination since the early days. While researching ways to treat contaminated material, she accidentally absorbed some herself, resulting in her current rough voice. Someone murmurs that she's crazy in more ways than one, but the doctor snaps at them to listen up. She formally introduces herself as Alice Stilza and insists they remember her name. The group finds it surprisingly cute, but something about her last name sparks a faint recognition in Ruto's mind. Just then, a boy's voice called out from another room, Alice's grandson, August, complaining loudly that the sweets tasted awful. His sister, Aisha, scolded him for being so blunt. As the two entered the room, they were surprised to see the cleaners gathered there. That's when Ruto pieced it together. Alice, August, and Aisha were family. Aisha explained they made sure to visit their grandmother once in a while, especially since they had no parents. Their mother and father, she said, had passed away early, though both were brilliant surgeons. Now, the siblings were following a similar path, studying medicine under Alice's guidance. Alice threatened that if August kept criticizing her sweets, she simply wouldn't make them anymore. Engine chuckled quietly, commenting as always that this family carried its own deep darkness. Later, with all treatments finished, Aisha sighed and said it was time for them to head home since she was exhausted. August turned to Rio, asking if she had a car and could give him a ride, but Aisha reminded him they had their own bike. Zanka, standing off to the side, quietly reflected on the victims of such deep, unseen darkness. August then curiously asked how the trip to the Forbidden Zone had gone and whether the mask he made had held up. Engine admitted that the trip had been a pain and half-joked that August should just go check on the reporter himself. Alice grumbled that she didn't care for noisy stories like that. With the sun beginning to set, August started up the motorbike and told Engine and the others to be careful heading back. Maybe use the trash shelter for safety. Engine thanked him and assured they would. As the siblings departed, Zanka watched their retreating figures and guessed they were heading home. In that quiet moment, Ruto looked up and muttered something almost to himself. Heaven, he said, seemed to be shifting. Engine explained that trash falling from above wasn't unusual, there was a pattern to it, and that's how they managed to establish safe zones to avoid fatal accidents. Still, he admitted, an alarming number of people had already died from garbage rains. Ruto was taken aback. and Tamsi added that more and more resentment was growing toward Heaven because of these incidents. The real tragedy, he said, was that even if someone tried to ascend and get revenge, they'd likely just fall to their death at the boundary. Rio called it a twisted mystery and wondered aloud how Ruto and that so-called angel had even managed to cross the boundary in the first place. Ruto, deep in thought, confessed he wasn't sure. Everything from that moment felt hazy. But, he said, he was certain he had seen something while falling. When Tamsi asked what exactly, Ruto admitted he couldn't recall. The memory was buried somewhere in the blur. Just then, a sudden ringing broke the tension. It was Enjin's choker. He answered the call casually, and Semyu's voice came through, asking where they were. He said they were on their way back and promised to explain everything later. But before hanging up, Semyu added a warning: it might be best to return through the back entrance today. Cleaner HQ, she said, was crawling with vermin. The scene cut to a crowd gathered in front of the cleaner's base. Their faces were grim, their intent clear. They weren't just there to protest. They were ready to destroy. As the cleaners made their way toward HQ, Ruto asked what was going on with the back entrance and the so-called pests. Enjin didn't elaborate much, simply hinting with a cryptic tone. When they arrived, he stopped the vehicle and tapped a panel displaying a poker face with his umbrella. The image flipped into an angry expression, and with a mechanical click, a hidden passage opened before them. This, Enjin said, was the back door Semyu had warned about. As they slipped inside, Enjin remarked on the irony. How curious it was that the pests would come all this way just to pick a fight with the cleaners. That only left Ruto more puzzled, so he asked again if bugs had actually gotten in. Enjin replied with a dry yes, and as if on cue, chaos erupted. Outside the cleaner headquarters, a battalion had gathered heavy weapons trained on the building. Without warning, a man among them fired a rocket launcher. The explosion ripped through the HQ, flames and debris bursting skyward. Enjin calmly explained that those weren't literal insects, but a group called the Marauders pests in their own right. The man who launched the attack let out a triumphant laugh. It was a clean hit, and now he declared their intention. They had come specifically to capture the Sky Person. Resistance would be futile, he warned, smugly claiming the cleaners had gotten soft. Then, with chilling boldness, he announced the start of their operation to peacefully take the Sky Person into custody. Ruto blinked in disbelief, stunned that the attackers were being called Marauders. Wasn't that supposed to mean the worst kind of people? Shouldn't they be doing something about this? But Enjin, visibly drained from their recent journey into the Forbidden Zone, sighed that he had no energy left to deal with another mess right now. Outside, the Marauders shouted threats through loudspeakers, demanding the surrender of the Sky Person. One warned that if they didn't comply, their base would be reduced to rubble. As the tension mounted, Semyu's voice came through the HQ speakers, sharp and unbothered. She mocked their sudden attempt at diplomacy, surprised they even knew what bargaining meant. Though she admitted she didn't know how they found out about the Sky Person, it was amusing that they were bold enough to attack from the front. Still, she shrugged. It didn't matter. One Marauder laughed in response, claiming their methods were perfectly fair and square. But with a sly tone, he revealed they were only decoys. Who knows how many of their members had already infiltrated the base during the distraction? Then, with a mocking familiarity, he addressed Semyu as sister, suggesting things didn't have to escalate if they just handed the Sky Person over. Without missing a beat, Semyu retorted that she wasn't a woman, stunning the Marauders into silence. But almost immediately, she chuckled and brushed it off. Just kidding, she said casually, telling them not to jump to conclusions so quickly. One of the Marauders, growing impatient, yells for Semyu to stop messing around. But instead of flinching, Semyu tilts her head and casually asks what hole they were talking about. Confused, the man who just launched in rocket glances past the rising smoke only to see that the cleaner headquarters remains untouched, not even a scratch marring the structure. Behind him, his teammates stumble forward, visibly shaken, and call out to him. Irritated, he snaps at them. They were supposed to be infiltrating, not dawdling. But one of them, panic evident in his voice, confesses that no matter what they tried, they couldn't get through. The building was impenetrable. Then a cleaner appears, body wrapped in what looks like a bulky comforter, only his eyes visible beneath it. Calmly, he remarks that it seems like they're under attack again, and honestly, it's scary. If the Marauders really want in, he says, they'll need proper clearance. That's the strongest shield after all. Semyu steps forward, facing the Marauders directly. Her voice is cold and confident as she announces that, unfortunately, they aren't accepting visitors today. Then she grins almost mockingly and challenges them to quit stalling and show her what they've got. The man with the rocket snaps. Furious, he reloads and yells that this was her doing. She asked for it, so now she can take it. He fires. As the rocket hurtles toward her, time seems to slow. Semiyu doesn't flinch. She moves with lightning precision, sidesteps, snatches the rocket midair with her bare hands, spins, and hurls it straight back at them. The marauders stare in stunned silence, too shocked to even react. She just caught a rocket and threw it back. The explosion bursts right in the marauders' faces, too late to dodge their own attack. Enraged and coughing from the blast, they aim their guns at Semiyu and shout for her to eat lead. But she doesn't even flinch. Calm and unreadable, she watches the bullets close in and then begins to move, effortless, graceful, deadly. She glides through the storm of bullets with precision, dodging each one like it's part of a dance choreographed only for her. In a blink, she's standing right in front of them. One high kick sends a man flying. Without missing a beat, she slams a back fist into the jaw of the one beside him. More marauders rush in, firing frantically, but she slips through their attacks like water and counters with devastating punches straight to their faces. One by one, they all go down. The group of thugs, armed, aggressive, and sure of their strength, crumble under her with ease. One of them, barely conscious, mutters that she's too strong. Semiyu doesn't even blink. If they want to challenge her, she tells them coolly, they'll need to bring something far more unpredictable. Just then, Engine arrives, calling out her name. He notes with a hint of amusement that once again she's taken care of the mess on her own, though to be fair, he expected nothing less. Semiyu shrugs it off, saying it was just a handful of punks. If she'd lost to them, it would have been a disgrace that haunted her family name forever. She then grabs one of the fallen marauders by the hair and calmly demands to know where he got the intel about a sky person being at Cleaner HQ. But even before he answers, she admits she already has a pretty good idea. Engine agrees with a knowing look, then turns toward Ruto. His tone grows serious as he tells him, "It looks like the time has come. Something is about to begin." At that moment, far away within the raider camp, a man slowly rises to his feet. Watching from the shadows, he murmurs to himself, it's time for him to make his move. In the next scene, a man enters and prepares to introduce himself but dismisses the idea, claiming his name doesn't matter since he's just a geyser who enjoys stylish things. He says he's returned to the stylish shop called Dun Dulce, a place that suits his usual exhaustion. The food is stylish, the clerks are stylish, and even the regulars and newcomers have stylish hair. He finds it incredibly calming, aside from the presence of the cleaners who are glaring at him. He notes that those people are regulars too, a group whose job is exterminating aberrant beasts. Givers, or those who rely on something, seem a bit creepy to him, but he shrugs it off as part of the scene. He calls Engine Stare nasty and mocks him as a tattooed bastard, saying Zanka and Rio share the same vibe. While the geyser makes his observations, Zanuck and Ryo chat, having just discovered that Rio accidentally drank Ruto's drink. Ryo apologizes quickly, and the man eyes Ruto, puzzled by the intense expression on his face. He notes that Ruto's eyes are way too nasty and wonders what's wrong with the kid. Thinking it looks like a vein is about to burst, that he added that this must be the fate of those who battled errant beasts and found it seriously terrifying, while Ruto sat still looking dazed, seemingly still processing that Rio had sipped from his drink. Someone then teased him, asking if he had frozen up from shock due to how long he was taking, prompting Ruto to question why they always had these relaxed food gatherings even right after being attacked. He asked if they didn't get the urgency of their situation, but Rio responded calmly, saying that after completing such a tough mission, sharing a meal was natural. Zanka bluntly told Ruto to shut up and eat, but Ruto clarified that he just meant they should stay more alert. Gree sympathized with what Ruto was trying to say, though Engine clearly disagreed. Engine stated that regardless of how bleak things looked, as long as they could sit and eat together, they'd find the strength to face whatever came next, adding that this wasn't even the first time they had been under attack. And Engine added that there were countless people out there who wanted to take down those who held power, calling such people truly sickening and better off dead. Ruto pointed out that they couldn't always rely on Semiyu to fend off attackers, to which he simply agreed. Engine elaborated that without some strange method or unique ability, getting past Semiyu would be nearly impossible, but if someone ever managed it, it would just result in a sort of "you did it" admiration, which Rio said she understood. Ruto then questioned why Semiyu worked only as a receptionist if she was that powerful, and Engine explained that Semiyu's glasses, which she referred to as her eyes, granted her a special seeing ability, though they couldn't be used to kill a baron. He added that Semiyu also seemed to admire office ladies, which made Ruto realize that was probably the main reason, concluding that being a giver alone wasn't enough to win against certain threats. Rio explained that everything depended on the giver's personality and how they chose to wield their jinki. If they wished to use their precious thing to its full potential, they were typically offensive types, whereas those who only wanted to protect it without causing harm leaned toward being defensive types. Rudo was surprised that the emotional value attached to an item could result in such a stark difference and admitted he wanted to observe more givers in action. Ryo asked if his interest had finally been piqued, and Engine assured him not to worry as the people about to arrive were quite unique. Rudo began to grow curious about who they were just as someone came rushing toward the entrance of Dun Dulce. The newcomer wore a dinosaur-style onesie and declared they had kept everyone waiting. The group Engine had mentioned arrived, and the one in the onesie announced the start of the Team Child meeting, while the man accompanying them complimented the group's good work and apologized to Engine for being late. Rudo once again came face to face with the pacifier kid, who asked for sweets, but Rudo clutched his treats tightly and refused, prompting the one in the onesie to suddenly recognize him. The one in the onesie said it had been a while, but Rudo didn't seem to recognize her and asked who she was, prompting her to explain that she had been present the first time Rudo arrived at the cleaners. Rudo asked if that was really the case, and the man with her took the opportunity to apologize for not introducing themselves earlier. The girl in the onesie was Gueta Heavy Fantasia, the pacifier kid was Dia Santa, and the one who seemed to be in charge of Team Child, more accurately the one responsible for them, was Bro Santa. Bro Santa added that there were other Team Child members as well, and he hoped everyone would get along. Gueta agreed and then excitedly asked Rudo to tell them more about the heavens, getting too close in the process and making Rudo visibly uncomfortable. Bro Santa scolded her, saying that wasn't the kind of thing to ask out in the open, and when Gueta questioned why, Engine explained that there were always people lurking around trying to snoop. According to what yesterday's pests had said, the info about Rudo came from an unknown man in a bar. A marauder claimed a man simply handed over the information for free. Engine concluded that the marauders had clearly been set up and manipulated into probing for weak spots in the cleaners through indirect, shady means. As he was talking, Gueta abruptly asked Rudo what kind of kaiju he liked, which irritated him enough to ask if Gueta's sense of personal space was malfunctioning. Ryo suggested the Vandals might be behind the spread of information again, and Engine replied that it was a possibility, especially since today's Vandals were said to be particularly ruthless. While they were talking, Gueta kept following Rudo even though he had already moved to another table, clearly irritated by how relaxed the others were and telling them to stay more alert. A man nearby, curious about Rudo's unease, asked if someone was after them, and Rudo replied vaguely that he didn't know, but it wasn't a thief or anything like that. The man then asked if he meant the Vandals and said it was troublesome to have their attention, continuing that he had heard they were desperately searching for something. He shouted to his companion to ask what exactly the Vandals were after, but the other simply said he didn't know either. Turning back to Rudo, the man warned him to be cautious because the Vandals had a new leader and were now willing to take what they wanted by any means. He stressed that they had become more vicious lately and told Rudo he would get robbed easily if he didn't stay sharp, which left Rudo visibly confused. Then, as if remembering something, the man showed Rudo a pair of boots and said that the Vandals were after things like those. It was Amo's Jinky, and Rudo was shocked. At that moment, the man revealed his face while his companion stood and removed his jacket, identifying himself as Katoni, a known Vandal. Grabbing Rudo by the neck, the first man declared that the information was free of charge and that he was the new head of the Vandals. At that moment, the reporter on TV announced the weather forecast, mentioning the raging storm that had been discussed for over a week was now finally approaching. The leader of the Vandals watched the screen and commented that the forecast was never wrong, which allowed them to prepare for record-breaking storms, a remark that stunned Rudo and shook him deeply. Suddenly, Engine stood up and charged at the Vandal leader with his Jinky, followed by the other cleaners and then Rudo, who joined in with a furious punch, making it seem like an all-out attack from the cleaners. The Vandal leader remained seated, calm and unmoving, as though he intended to absorb the full brunt of their assault. Just as Rudo's punch was about to land, Katoni appeared behind his leader and activated his manhole ability, creating a portal that redirected the attack. The leader dodged and Rudo's arm passed through the portal, catching him off guard as he was pulled in along with the Vandal leader. All the cleaners immediately rushed to grab Rudo, their sky person prodigy, and Engine managed to catch hold of his leg just in time. But Engine too was pulled into Katan's portal along with the other cleaners who were nearby, and once they had all been sucked in, Katan smiled and declared that the cleaners had been caught. Only the supporters remained behind, having failed to reach either their allies or the two Vandals in time, and Gree quietly acknowledged that they didn't make it. One of the staff, however, was more concerned with the fact that the cleaners and Vandals disappeared without paying. The scene then shifted to the cleaners still being warped through space, clueless about where Catan was taking them. Eventually, they landed with a thud in the middle of a pitch-dark room. Engine was furious, complaining that they had been eating only moments ago and didn't even get to finish dessert, grumbling about being starving and dragged to such a place. Someone questioned where they were and where exactly they had ended up, while Engine noticed that their supporters hadn't followed. Rio dryly commented that they were in this mess because of the manhole giver's ability, sarcastically calling it a very convenient setup. At that moment, Rudo rose to his feet, surrounded by a strange aura, his face twisted with fury. Rudo said the Vandals had done something to Amo, and the tense atmosphere made Engine rise to speak, but he froze mid-sentence as soon as he saw what stood before them, his expression twisting into pure rage. Zanuck, Rio, and Gueta moved in behind him, followed by the two Santas from Team Child. A bright light burst open from the direction of their opponents, the Vandals, revealing that they had arrived in a space lined with countless holes in the walls. Both groups now faced each other in a heavy standoff, with Rudo and the Vandal leader staring one another down, their eyes locked in a deadly exchange of intent. Boiling with frustration and fury, Rudo demanded to know where Amo was, but the leader gave him nothing more than a hard, silent glare. Engine stepped forward, addressing the Vandals directly, saying he understood they had come to retrieve Rudo again, but this time he hadn't come alone. Gueta, not thrilled about being referred to as an extra, frowned, while Rio casually remarked that everyone loves extras. Gueta, pacified by Rio's comment, accepted being called an extra, but Zanuck asked if she truly couldn't read the room. Engine shifted focus back to the Vandals, his glare sharpening as he demanded to know what they planned to do, what game they intended to play for the prize, yet the Vandal leader remained silent, staring at a watch in his hand as though awaiting something. He addressed Rudo's earlier concern about the cleaners being too relaxed, claiming it was incorrect since the people of the surface were always on alert, which was why they never left Rudo alone and why he was there now. He added that the extras were well within his prediction, and just then a sound echoed, followed by a sudden surge erupting from a nearby hole. The cleaners were surrounded before they could react, and Rudo's face twisted in terror as he braced for what looked like a tidal wave. But someone yanked him back just in time to keep him from being swept away by the incoming current, a muddy flood of trash that surged through the chamber. Zanuck was shocked as he realized it wasn't water but a powerful torrent of waste, and the filthy stream rendered Zanka unable to move. Zanka, overwhelmed by the trash flood, was stunned to spot Engine calmly floating atop his umbrella as if it were a boat, casually advising that resisting would only make them drown faster and they should just ride the current, though he quickly declared he was giving up because of an upcoming fork in the flow. As they were split apart by the branching current, Engine shouted for the others to survive while Zanka, furious, yelled that he would kill the Vandal leader. Meanwhile, Rudo was thrown to the ground, having just been pulled away from the current by the very man he despised, the leader of the Vandals. Still stunned and fuming over the fate of his companions, Rudo tried to demand their whereabouts, but the leader dismissed the need for answers, saying they came of their own will. Not wanting to waste resources, the leader signaled and 4 manholes opened as his subordinates entered them. Jabber, grinning wildly, shouted to Rudo that they were off to play with the extras and he should get along with the boss, cackling as he vanished into one of the portals. Left alone with the Vandal leader, Rudo froze, consumed by fear as the man loomed before him in a shroud of dark energy, asking what exactly the Amo he kept mentioning was, the question hitting Rudo like a jolt. At the same time, in a different place, Zanka stood and saw a manhole open beside him, Jabber's hand emerging as the Vandal leader's voice echoed, wondering if Amo was the true reason behind Rudo's rage. But the leader calmly stated that regardless of Rudo's anger, he had only come to share his own rage. Then, with a sharp and intimidating stare, he finally introduced himself as Zodal Typhon, extending an invitation to Rudo to join him in bringing down the heavens. Rudo stands frozen, unable to process Zodal's words, an invitation to bring down the heavens. For a brief moment, a strange vision flashes before them both, showing the sky shattering, as if their rage had summoned the same image. Zodal asks if Rudo saw it too, but quickly clarifies he has no idea what heaven even looks like, having never seen it himself. It's not about the heavens themselves, he explains, but about the aftermath of their destruction, the consequences for their target. Zodal presses Rudo, wondering if he felt the same, not what would happen to those he cherishes but to the ones he despises. At that, a flood of fury wells up in Rudo as memories surge. The disciples, the crowd, the killer of Regdo. He explodes, demanding that Zodal stop deflecting and answer. What happened to the boot's owner and to the other cleaners? But Zodal only responds that Rudo was the one who dodged earlier, offering his own version of an answer, so now he must do the same. He calls it a conversation, a fair exchange. He says he hates waste, including wasted words, and insists Rudo listen. A cold sweat breaks down Rudo's back as unease coils in his chest. Something about Zodal makes it hard to speak, hard to breathe. This feels nothing like speaking with Amo, where the words simply fell apart. With Zodal, the silence grips like a vice. With Zodal, the conversation feels like a trap, each word tightening its grip around Rudo. He instinctively reaches behind him, recalling the trash he had packed, though he hasn't restocked since their time in the desert. If things go wrong, he figures he'll have to rely on that. Meanwhile, Zodal scans their surroundings, then turns to him, asking if he's truly that worried about the cleaners and about Amo. Before Rudo can respond, Zodal cuts in again, questioning the reason he joined the cleaners in the first place. After a pause, Rudo answers, it was to return to the heavens. This reply draws a piercing follow-up. Does he actually believe the cleaners can help him ascend? The question shakes him. Zodal points out that returning to the heavens isn't part of the cleaners' mission, and their involvement with him is merely coincidence. Maybe, he suggests, Rudo was never truly satisfied with that arrangement. Perhaps this whole friendship thing was never enough for him. As that heavy implication settles over Rudo, the scene shifts to a windy hilltop covered in windmills, where Rio finds herself coughing up trash. Rio grumbles as she wipes trash from her clothes, clearly annoyed by the mess and muttering that the whole situation sucks. Looking around, she wonders where the others went and what this bizarre place even is. Just then, a manhole opens behind her and someone emerges with repeated meows, teasing her for looking like a frightened kitten. As they land, they remark there's nothing cute about the scene. Rio laughs, saying the harshness was unexpected, but she's still trying to make sense of what's happening. She wonders aloud if she's been dragged all the way down just to fight this woman one-on-one, realizing the vandals are more serious than she thought. The woman agrees, explaining that if they weren't serious about the mission, they'd already be the ones getting beaten up. Jabber then finishes her sentence with a grin. Meanwhile, across various strange locations, each cleaner ends up facing their respective opponents. Engine finds himself in a tunnel cluttered with bedroom furniture, facing a timid boy hiding behind a container. The two Santas land in a junkyard, their opponent an older man with a cowboy look. And finally, Zanka comes face to face with Jabber, who greets him mockingly, calling him bad boy. As they both activate their jinky, Jabber says he's thrilled that Zanka gets to be the next one to beat the hell out of him. As Jabber squares off with Zanka, everything else fades away from Zanka's mind. There is only this fight. He raises his love stick, while Jabber prepares himself with wild anticipation. Kill or be killed. They clash instantly, Zanka blocking Jabber's right hand with his jinky, his face composed with steely focus, in contrast to Jabber's manic grin and relentless laughter. Jabber swings Zanka's weapon aside and lunges with his left claw, but Zanka is ready and parries with a powerful swing, sending Jabber skidding backward. Of course, it does little to slow the vandal, who launches himself forward again, resuming the brutal exchange. Zanka struggles to find any opening amid Jabber's rapid and unpredictable attacks. Then, not far from them, a faint bubbling sound draws their attention. A small pool of boiling liquid simmers ominously nearby. Jabber suddenly pauses, mockingly asking what the sound might be, and Zanka seizes the moment to strike. But Jabber is already airborne, dodging the swing with ease. He lands near the boiling puddle and comments on the strange liquid rising up from the surface. He admits he doesn't know what it is, but still wonders what would happen if he touched it. Without hesitation, he dips his left hand in, only to scream in pain as it burns him. Zanka watches, stunned, overwhelmed by Jabber's sheer recklessness. Jabber continued screaming non-stop. Zanka remains frozen as he watches Jabber's claws begin to change, the boiling liquid coating them in a grotesque sheen. Jabber announces that he's finally obtained it, referring to this new ability now seeping from his hands. Zanka observes carefully and realizes the liquid on Jabber's claws is the same corrosive substance from earlier. Jabber explains that while his right claw has always secreted neurotoxin, a fixed tray, his left claw adapts to reflect any new poisons he introduces into his body. As droplets of this fresh venom drip to the ground, he grins and wonders aloud how long Zanka can last dodging the barrage of toxins he's about to unleash. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Judah from Team Child surveys the strange environment she's been dropped into, uncertain if she's alone. A sudden movement catches her eye, a cockroach crawling from a hole. Rather than recoil, Judah beams with delight at the sight, but Rio nearby reacts with visible horror despite the insect's small size. Catching herself, Rio quickly refocuses and remembers that she's supposed to be in a battle. She turns to her opponent and casually says she doesn't mind bugs, though cockroaches are at least a little startling. Her opponent, already bewildered by the bizarre mood, appears completely thrown off by her remark. In the dimly lit tunnel, Engine tries to start a conversation with the figure crouched behind a container, repeatedly calling out to him, but gets only silent stares in return. He remarks that it's pretty lonely being ignored like that and wonders aloud what's going on in the guy's head. Then he starts piecing things together. Was Rudo their real target, and are the rest of them just considered extras now? If so, why wasn't he being swarmed like before, and why had only one person come after him? Meanwhile, his opponent quietly thinks to himself that Engine actually looks kind of cool. Elsewhere, the two Santas arrive in a strange area cluttered with power poles. One of them wonders what kind of place it is, and Bro Santa notes the oddity of the power poles despite them being clearly underground. Their enemy confirms this and suggests checking their chokers to figure things out. Apparently, Rio's opponent had given her the same advice, and Rio now realizes her choker isn't connecting. Chokers are convenient, but basically useless underground. She asks if that means she should expect no backup. Her opponent, standing firm, replies that Zodal's orders were absolute. Then, with a swift motion, she draws a hair comb from her pocket that transforms into her jinky, its sides lined with sharp blades. She explains that Zodal instructed them to each take down at least one opponent if anyone other than Rudo arrived. Finally, she introduces herself as Nelda Hagamozo. Nelda declares her intent to turn Rio into an offering, calling her Kitten, but Rio, unamused, tells her to drop the nickname and just use her actual name. She then reveals her scissors, admitting it's tough for her to fight humans, but Nelda isn't interested in sympathy and tells her not to be naive. Hesitation could cost her friends dearly. That warning catches Rio off guard, and she realizes she has no time to waste. Activating her Jinky, the Ripper, she charges forward, opening with a fake knee strike that turns into a sudden slash. Nelda ducks to evade, and as she glances back, Rio lands with a snap of her scissors, having sliced off a bit of her hair. Nelda is startled by the clean move, realizing too late that what she thought was just a bluff had actually landed. She reminds herself not to let her guard down just because she dodged once. Rio reassures her that she's holding back with the Ripper, aiming not to hurt her body, though she can't promise her silky smooth hair will survive unscathed. As if to respond, Nelda calmly starts brushing her hair. Rio questions whether Nelda is actually using her hair in combat since her comb is her Jinky, pointing out that scissors and hair are a bad match, but says it doesn't matter, she's going to cut it anyway. With that, she charges in once more, but before the attack lands, the scene cuts back to Zanka's fight. Jabber is trapped beneath the overturned ground, steam rising from the boiling poison below. Zanka watches carefully, eyes narrowed, and approaches slowly, calling out that he knows Jabber is still alive and there's no point in hiding or pulling any tricks. But when there's no reply, he hesitates, questioning whether he really managed to take down someone as relentless as Jabber. As he peers beneath the slab of earth, the ground suddenly shakes and Jabber's voice echoes with laughter, congratulating Zanka in a twisted tone, saying he's finally done it. He declares that now, with whatever he's acquired, he can defeat Zanka. Shocked, Zanka watches as Jabber rises once more from the rubble. Jabber stands tall with massive claws now extending from his arms, declaring it's been a long time since he was pushed into revealing his true form. Zanka stares in disbelief, questioning where Jabber had even gotten those claws, unable to imagine that everything before this wasn't already the Vandal's full strength. Jabber calls out to him, taunting him to bring out his best as well. The scene then returns to Rio and Nelda, where Nelda continues to calmly brush her hair. Meanwhile, Jabber is still pressing Zanka, asking if he's not done playing around yet and insisting there's no way that just swinging a pole is all he's capable of. He demands Zanka fight for real. Then the focus shifts back to Rio again, now crouched with her feet firmly planted on the ground, while Nelda continues to comb through her hair with practiced elegance. Rio lunges and strikes Nelda's hair with her scissor Jinky, but the moment the blades make contact, her body suddenly freezes. She collapses flat to the ground, the Ripper slipping from her hand. Lying there stunned, she stares at Nelda, who remains motionless, simply watching her in silence. Rio struggles to push herself up, but pain shoots through her body, sharp and inexplicable. She doesn't understand what just happened, only that touching Nelda's hair caused a jolt that left her trembling. She mutters to herself that the hair wasn't smooth at all. Nelda then calmly explains that plastic combs, when dragged through hair, naturally build static electricity, especially with dryness, something anyone with long hair knows too well. But her case is different. Her jinky, she reveals, is made entirely of plastic, and she constantly lives under the weight of stored electrostatic charge. As she combs her hair again, it's clear, it isn't soft, it's electric. Sparks crackle and dance through her hair, and in this state, Ryo's scissor jinky is simply no match. Still, no matter the explanation, Ryo lies there visibly drained, her body barely responding after the sudden and powerful blow. Meanwhile, Katan monitors the ongoing battles from afar, using her manholes to jump between locations. She observes each fight closely, recording the events as they unfold before closing each portal and moving on. Exhaustion from the constant travel is starting to show, and she mutters that once this round is over, she'll take a break. From one hidden vantage point, something she hears catches her off guard, prompting her to pause and watch more carefully. Just moments earlier, Dia had been staring intensely at their opponent, his glare sharp and unwavering. Brock, noticing, calls out, warning him not to keep making such a face in front of the enemy unless he wanted wrinkles when he gets older. Dia doesn't respond, only glances at him, and Brock guesses that he's probably thinking about why they're even there when they just came for food. Brock dismisses the situation with a shrug, comparing it to being sent on an unexpected job. Besides, Dia had thrown himself into the mess by keeping tabs on Rudo, which probably led him to follow along. Dia's expression changes, subtly confirming Brock's theory, and Brock chuckles, teasing that it's probably embarrassing. The enemy perched casually atop a nearby car smiles at the exchange and asks if the two are family. Brock confirms they are, but clarifies that there's no blood relation. Still, he wants to wrap things up quickly, since Dia gets sleepy if they don't get home by night. The man nods with interest, saying he sees, so the boy's name is Dia, and then asks if he can call him Little Diameter, but Dia's glare clearly says no to being called Little Dia, though the man only chuckles, calling his cheekiness cute for his age. Curious, he asks how old Dia is, and Brock replies that he just turned 10 last month. When asked the exact date, Brock casually says the 17th, September 17th. The man looks surprised, noting that their birthdays are close since his is on the 19th. Brock asks if that means he also just got older recently, and the man groans at the reminder, saying it hits hard when people say he's getting old. Brock laughs at the comment, but then his tone shifts slightly as he wonders aloud if this was turning into a conversation just between old guys. Dia pouts with a small huff, and Brock scolds him lightly, saying that kind of reaction makes him feel sad. Scratching his head, Brock turns back to the man and finally asks what his deal is, noting that he doesn't sense any hostility from him and wonders if he really intends to fight. The man responds with a single word, Bundus, prompting Brock to pause before realizing it's his name. Brock introduces himself in return, quietly thinking how this situation feels unexpectedly tricky. Bundus then clarifies that he holds no hostility at all. Bundus explains that for now, he's only present under Zodal's orders, but personally, there's something else he's after. Brock asks if that means they can avoid fighting, but Bundus responds with a puzzled no. Defeating them is the only way he can get one of the things he desires. As this tension builds, Dia notices something unusual on the ground and tugs at Brock's clothes. Following Dia's gaze, Brock spots it too, a strange object resembling a human finger merged with a frog's hand. At that moment, Bundus activates his jinky. From the metal device attached to his left shoulder, a mechanism unfolds, and he states that what he's truly seeking is information. If they give him the answers he wants, he'll reveal what happens when the cleaners beat the vandals. Dia watches nervously as multiple fingers extend from Bundus' shoulder, twitching and reaching out. The question he poses is simple but heavy: what kind of person is the cleaners' boss? The scene shifts back to the headquarters of the cleaners, where an eerie eye-like mark appears at the nape of Corvus' neck. A voice calls out to him, addressing him as boss, prompting him to turn. It's Semiyu. He immediately objects to the title, asking when she even started calling him that. But Semiyu brushes it off, saying it's not important right now because they have an emergency. She informs him that Ruto, along with 4 from Acta and 3 from Child, have been captured by the Vandals. Their location is still unknown, and Gree had just reported they were ambushed by someone with a warp-type ability. She stresses that they need to mobilize all available personnel, and points out that Corvus not wearing his choker has made it difficult to reach him, contributing to the issue. Corvus calmly sips his drink before giving his approval. He tells Semiyu to gather everyone who can move, while he'll take charge of tracking their location, mentioning he knows a reliable informant. Meanwhile, back in the trap the Vandals created, Dia looks puzzled as the strange finger they'd seen earlier hops across the floor like a frog and returns to Bundus. Bro presses him for clarification about his earlier question regarding their boss, but Bundus simply repeats that he meant exactly what he said. Was it really that difficult to answer? If it was, then he would just ask one question. Bundus insists on taking it one question at a time, but Bro stops him, suspecting that he's trying to extract vital intel about the cleaners through seemingly harmless questions. He firmly states that he won't reveal anything that could be used against them. Bundus calmly responds, saying not to take it the wrong way, he's simply curious. He describes himself as an individualist, guided by curiosity and a questioning mind. Whatever is said here won't be relayed to the Vandals, it's just a personal exchange of information, nothing more. He adds that Bro's doubt is fair, but unless he answers, there's no other way forward. There's no exit. Then, with an almost offhand remark, Bundus says it's also a perfect time for bedtime. Concerned, Bro glances at Diameter. After a pause, weighing the situation, he finally agrees. He'll answer whatever Bundus asks for now. Satisfied, Bundus begins his line of questioning. His first question catches Bro off guard. What is Corvus' favorite food? Brock hesitates, then replies he's pretty sure Corvus likes sweets. He recalls hearing him mention it once. Next, Bundus asks how old Corvus is. Brock shrugs, admitting he doesn't know. Has Corvus ever gone out to enjoy himself? Bro shakes his head, he's never seen him do that. How long has Corvus been with the cleaners? Again, no idea. Finally, Bundus asks if Brock has ever seen Corvus use his jinky. Bro answers simply, never. Bro begins to grow uneasy. His plan, if things got risky, was to control the conversation and lie when necessary, but so far, Bundus's questions had been oddly mundane. That alone made Bro even more uncomfortable. He glances at Dia, who's starting to look irritated. If this keeps up, Brock thinks the kid's face will wrinkle from stress before he even hits puberty. Sighing, Bro settles beside Dia, resting a hand on his shoulder and wondering why he always finds himself tangled in these kinds of situations. He mutters under his breath that he gets what Bundus is trying to do, but really, he's not sure what the right play is. Then Bro adds something that makes Dia flinch. If the cleaners lose here, he suspects the Vandals plan to offer them up to the aberrant beasts. Maybe the others haven't seen them yet, but he's sure of one thing. The Vandals had succeeded in creating a few already. Dia stays quiet, but Brock seems to sense something change. He glances at the boy, then stiffens. Had he just heard something strange? Standing up, he turns back to Bundus with narrowed eyes. Bundus, in response, nods calmly. Because Bro shared information, he says he deserves a little truth in return. Even a tiny detail about someone like Corvus, just knowing he likes sweets, adds a layer of humanity. And that's not insignificant. Bundus adds that Corvus is a mystery to many, but he's no fool. He's kept his true self veiled even from his own allies, and there's a reason for that. A new voice emerges, observing that anyone who glanced at the trash falling from above would instantly understand. The heavens were overflowing with abundance. A cockroach scurries across the ground as Zodal and Rudo stand face to face. The leader of the Vandals reflects, speaking almost in admiration. Living beings are endlessly fascinating. They evolve, adapt. Mixed in with the heaps of discarded waste from above are even the corpses of creatures the Abyss has never seen before. And just like those creatures, people too shift and change when their world is altered. Zodal states plainly, he is from the Abyss and Rudo is from the sky. Yet despite that, why do their eyes look the same? Rudo tenses, visibly unsettled. Zodal continues, noting that even Jabber, eccentric as he is, mentioned Rudo had the same scent. Jabber has a knack for sensing people, and that's why Zodal found Rudo so interesting. He says he wants to see it with his own eyes. Rudo, increasingly wary, wonders what Zodal is even getting at. If he's trying to rope him into some shared mission to destroy the heavens, why not speak plainly? Why not approach him fairly as one person to another? But before anything else, Rudo clarifies something. He doesn't just listen to others blindly. His goal is the heavens, but not because someone told him to. He has people up there he wants to punish with his own hands. That's his choice. So Zodal better not talk like they're the same. And above all, he has no right dragging the janitors into it. Zodal listens in silence, then calmly shifts his attention to the cockroach still creeping along the floor. He muses aloud, almost absently, wondering what normal even means. Did Rudo know? In the Abyss, there are those who worship the very trash that falls from the sky. To them, it's divine. It doesn't matter if it's rotting food, splintered wood, or twisted metal that shatters their bones. They cherish it all as blessings. They even try to convert others to their beliefs. From the outside, Zodal says, that kind of devotion would surely look insane. Zodal's voice grows quiet, almost thoughtful, as he explains that once someone becomes numb to madness, it simply turns into routine. It weaves into daily life until it's accepted as normal, common sense even. He bends down and gently picks up the cockroach. In the abyss, he says, anyone who dares question or resist that accepted way of life is treated like a heretic. Rudo listens in silence, his mind drifting back to his own experience, how he was cast down, exiled by a system he could never defy. Zodal continues, calmly contrasting different forms of common sense. There's the kind rooted in doing good for others. But the kind born from madness, when left unchecked, slowly becomes a toxic illusion. A poison that eats away at people from within, quietly, without them ever realizing it. Unless, of course, something acts as a trigger.